A Science of Change, podcasting by Gilmore Crosby, social scientist, author, and organization development professional since 1984. This is Gil Crosby. Good to be with you again. And I'm with a dear friend, Charlie Badenhop, who originally a New Yorker, moved to Japan long ago, 1985, and currently lives in Thailand, and is a rare human being that I find when I talk to Charlie, I learn things. And that is a great pleasure for me to have a contact that consistently helps me think about things in a new way and see the world in a new light. He's the creator of, and forgive me, Charlie, if I mispronounce this, Seishindo. Seishindo, yes. And which is his own mix of wisdom. And so, Charlie, I'm just going to turn it over to you to talk about whatever you want. Certainly, Seishindo. I'm very interested in having the viewers hear from you about that and about the book you've written on the same subject.
Okay.
Take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's Seishindo, and what that means, maybe, of course, I think everybody's heard of the word judo, and maybe they've heard of cha-do, which is tea ceremony. Anyway, there are a lot of do's in Japan. Do, Aikido is what I studied and became a professional in. And a do is a path that you study on, fully understanding that you'll never fully master it, and there'll be always something more for you to learn. And I found out that even though I reached a pretty high level in Aikido, it was like these new vistas kept on opening up in front of me. So it always was very interesting for me to go to the dojo and work hard and study and learn something new. And
that just reminds me of the path of being human, that there's always going to be more if you're a human that's learning.
Yes. Well, it's taught in such a way that the teacher makes it obvious at some point, and they could even get a little rough with you in Aikido and some other Japanese arts, if he thinks you're starting to get an inflated ego.
That makes sense.
And I never had any particular problem with that. I'm sure I've had inflated egos in other ways, but there was times when one or two of the senseis would really take somebody to task and throw him around really hard until 2, 3, 4 times until where the guy could barely get off the mat anymore. And the teacher said, I threw you these 4 or 5 times the way you throw other people, and I don't want you to do it anymore. And if you do it anymore, the next time you come back, I'm going to throw you out. And for today, just leave. And this is while the guy's still half laying on the mat, not even sitting yet. And he just looked up and knew there wasn't a yes, no, or maybe to that. He just got up and walked out. And when he came back the next time, it wasn't the very next class, but when he did come back the next time, he was somewhat different.
More humble, I imagine.
Yeah. So it's good to know. It's good to know that there's always more to learn, and it's good to know that you're never going to really completely master anything. Like, I would call myself a semi-professional musician. I play blues harp, and I can be rather good at it at times, but I don't even read music, so it's all improvisation, and you get going. And when you're in the flow, or when I'm in the flow, and I think pretty much any musician can tell you this, when you're in the flow, there aren't any wrong notes. You don't play any wrong notes. I mean, you might not be able to play as fast as somebody else, but you just don't I don't know, the wrong notes don't even exist. It's a funny thing, actually. So
It's like sports when you're in the flow also.
yes. And wouldn't it be nice to know we can go through life and there really isn't any way we can mess up, you know? And when I say
Mm-hmm.
there really isn't any way, it doesn't mean you can start not caring about other people or paying attention. But as long as you're out there with a positive thought in mind and a good feeling towards other people, there's no way that you can really mess up. And in fact, what I have found, and I teach people when I'm coaching them, is that if you find you've gotten to a place with someone where you're going to have one of those, oh, I don't know, conversations, if you continue to respect the other person and keep yourself as emotionally balanced as possible, those are the conversations that add to the quality of your relationship with the other person. They'll never take away from the relationship with the other person. Of course, when I say never, I mean in general, they'll never take away from the relationship with the other person, because you'll come to a new understanding of each other.
Yep, you'll probably deepen the relationship.
Yes. And so I studied Aikido diligently for, I don't know, about 25 years. And I was a professional martial artist in Japan for 20 years. And what you keep learning through Aikido, it's a martial art, but there's no attack form. There's no punching. There's no kicking.
Mm-hmm.
And we not only don't we have the intention of somehow, knocking the other person out, we are tasked with the responsibility of caring for the other person. So, for instance, me as a professional martial artist, and I had, I guess you could call it a license in English, a license to teach. If I had ever gotten into a fight with anyone for any reason, if I had ever gotten into a fight with anyone and seriously hurt them, I could have possibly been sent to jail. Because the Japanese government believes with all your training, there's no way you should ever hurt anybody else, which is a pretty amazing, I believe, pretty amazing way of thinking when it comes to a martial art. So I've never been in a fight in my adult life. And I had a couple of little scraps when I was like 10 or 11 years old or something. And it'd be really almost impossible for me to imagine getting in a physical altercation with someone. It would really have to be somehow something that seemed to be life or death. And it certainly wouldn't be that someone called me a naughty name, or called my daughter or girlfriend or whatever a naughty name, because that's just ego.
Sure. If they were attacking your girlfriend or your daughter.
If they were attacking my girlfriend or my daughter or me,
Mm-hmm.
it'd be pretty unlikely that they would attack me. But if they were, of course, I'm going to protect myself. And if I had an incident like 22 years ago on a train platform with my daughter, who was like maybe 7 years old at the time, and some drunk guy, he wasn't going to hurt her, but like he put his hand on the top of her head and tilted her head back. And I was already into the scene by that time. And he just want to talk to you, kind of thing. And I put my daughter behind me. I put my hand up like a kind of like a stop sign. And I said, please step backwards. And he looked at me, and I was, of course, quite serious. And everybody on this crowded train platform had frozen. And he looked at me like a second time, a third time. He backed up and he walked away.
That's a good decision.
That's almost always enough.
Sure.
Almost always enough, because the main thing is your intention.
Yeah, and your calm presence.
Yes. And
you didn't lose your head.
Yes. So that's with that. And so I've had a pretty unusual life. My dad, bless his soul, was, he was a huge hero in the New York City Fire Department. And he was also a violent alcoholic. And when the violence would really come out is on a day or a night when someone had died, sometimes literally in his arms. And sometimes he would come back with their skin stuck to his face because they were so badly burned by the time he got to them, and he was doing mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on them. In those days, they didn't have any devices to put between the two people. And he would come home, and when I heard the bottle hit the table, my sister and I knew it wasn't safe to be at home that night, but we had no choice. So partially, I think my bug for traveling was, and I didn't think about this until years later, my bug for traveling and going around the world was I wanted to get as far away from the scene of the crime as I could.
Sure, that makes sense. A lot of people do that.
So, great hero, my father, saved a lot of people's lives. Yep. And, in those days, the fire department and the police department both, just like with the military, which to a large extent still is, they had no understanding of the trauma that people were going through. And in those days, they had no programs to help those people. And, people like my father needed help. So anyway, I've been self-employed my entire life since high school. And I could say an entrepreneur. That sounds a little bit more highfalutin. And so I learned a lot of things the hard way, but I did learn a lot of things. And I never lost a lot of money. I never made a lot of money, but a couple of times I made pretty good money. And when I sold my most successful business in New York City, it gave me plenty of money to go travel to Japan and find out what this Aikido was really about and study with the big boys, as I call it.
So you were already a student of Aikido in New York City?
Yeah, a couple of years, but I was too busy working to be serious at it, but I knew there was something special. And I got to Japan. I got to the airport out in about 2.5 hours away from Tokyo, the city itself, maybe at about 3:00 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. And luckily, someone was going to meet me and help me, and they took me to an inexpensive Japanese hotel. And 6:30 the next morning, I was in the dojo. I don't know. I'm still impressed with the fact that I found it because, in Tokyo, there's almost no street names. And what they do is they number the blocks, like if you say between 5th Avenue and 6th Avenue and 45th Street and 46th Street, that's a block. And they number with numerous numbers those blocks, but they don't have names for it. So anyway, I did manage to find my way to the dojo. And next thing you know, I was in the dojo studying 30 hours a week because I'm compulsive. And that's the way that compulsive people do things. And even the Japanese people were blown away that I was studying as much as I was. But I found it when I was first there. If you think back, this is about 40 years ago. There was no internet. I didn't know anything about Japan. I didn't know how to speak Japanese. Very few Japanese people speak English. I remember many, many times feeling like I was in a movie, a movie set.
No doubt.
And I loved it. I loved it. And Japan
sounds like
go ahead.
Sounds like a movie. Sounds like a movie or a book. One of my when I studied briefly compared to you, Kung Fu, I was charmed by a book about a young man who went to China before Nixon and all that, East-West opening of China. And he went to the temple where, now I forget the name of the temple. It's the It's the most famous kung fu like monastery, and lived there as the only American in the area for a long, long time. So it should be made into a movie, Charlie.
Yeah, well, you do know I wrote a book about my life in Japan. It's been well received. It's called Pure Heart, Simple Mind. Of course, I'm the author, Charlie Badenhop. At this point, it's available in Kindle on Amazon.
I have it open here on my laptop.
Okay.
It's a lovely book.
Yeah, thank you. Because when you see something happening or you hear somebody say something that kind of blows your mind, all of a sudden you have this realization that you're not in Kansas anymore,
Yeah.
And I married a lovely Japanese woman, and her grandmother was 4 feet 11 inches tall, perfect posture, perfectly, what's the word, good-mannered person. And when I first met her, I could hardly speak anything with her because my Japanese wasn't good. And little by little, we really became good friends. And when she was in the process of a low, slow denouement, bowing out of life, I would go and visit her. And she did something, very unusual for a Japanese person. She'd be laying in bed. She'd hold up her hand, and she wanted to hold my hand. And even if it was me and my wife and my wife's parents and maybe even another couple of relatives, she would hold out her hand only to me, because Japanese people, for the most part, don't even do that. And she'd squeeze it, and she was very, very comfortable when she was holding my hand, and she felt everything was going to be fine. So there were many things that happened to me that, just really left me with a sense of wonderment, and it's one of the greatest experiences you can have in life. So, done a lot. Like I went to Kathmandu, Nepal. I'm going to call it 40 years ago. Incredible place at the time. Lots of wonderful handicrafts and stuff to buy. And I just wound up buying a whole bunch of stuff, bringing it back to Tokyo. Still had almost no Japanese. And I just traveled around on a very small motorbike with a very big duffel bag, and I'd see a shop that looked like a potential customer, and I'd stop and I'd go in, and they'd be frightened as hell that this big foreigner came in with this huge duffel bag. And that's how I developed my clientele. And then eventually I met became good friends with several Nepali people, and one of them had a French wife who was a very talented clothing designer. So we built our own small factory, and we were making very, very high quality clothing, like perfect stitching, in Kathmandu, and at that point selling it wholesale into Tokyo, which was quite unheard of, quite unheard of. So I've had a very interesting life. I'm hoping to still continue to have a very interesting life. And I particularly had an interesting life about, I'm not sure exactly how long ago it was now, 2.5 years ago. I was talking to a client on Zoom. I love Zoom, by the way. It's such a great mobile platform. And this client, who I knew for years, said, Charlie, I hope you don't think I'm getting strange or anything, but I want to tell you that the right side of your throat, it seems like it's been a little swollen, as far as I can tell, the last couple of weeks. And I could see myself on the screen. I started poking around, couldn't feel anything. I said, but okay, I don't want to be foolish about this. Went to the doctor, went to the hospital the next day. Long story short, I got a CT scan, And when the results came back, the doctor said, well, you're not going to like what I have to tell you. And then I had him pause, and I said, doctor, please promise me that no matter how bad the news is, you'll tell me the truth.
Mm-hmm.
He looked at me and kind of shook his head, kind of like in a figure eight, and said, okay, you've got stage 4 cancer, which is as bad as it gets, and there's a good chance you won't live through this. And I took a deep breath, and I said, well, I'm not happy with what you told me, but I'm very, very thankful that you told me what you did, because I have a lot of martial arts experience and knowing how to do breathing exercises and energy management. And I'm going to use that to the best of my ability and heighten my chances of making it through this. And here I am now. So it's most likely around 2 years since I was initially diagnosed. I don't know how much people will be able to hear on this podcast, because most of the people will have never heard me before, but my throat's a little, shall we call it, husky.
Mm-hmm. But you certainly sound progressively better.
Yes. Well, because you and I talked maybe a year, well, a number of times, but, maybe we might have even talked while I was in treatment.
Quite a few times, Charlie.
Yeah. And yes, I don't remember much about it's funny. When you first get diagnosed with cancer, and I'll just say I do some work now pro bono, or I charge a little bit of money just so people respect what they're getting to people, cancer patients.
Mm-hmm.
And you really need an advocate, someone that's looking after you, who's going to question what the doctors are saying. And I can tell you, when I first got diagnosed, I came out of the room by myself. I came out of the room, I'm not sure I knew what day of the week it was or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I had been a smoker off and on. I had throat cancer. I had been a smoker off and on, but off for 4, 5, 6 years at a time, smoking again for 5 or 6 years, off again for 4 years, whatever. And here's for me that was so interesting. I had completely stopped and was certain that I wasn't going back to smoking 2 years before I got diagnosed with cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Only to find out afterwards that you should be cigarette free for at least 5 years. So I can tell you that, well, I was very lucky. I had the best. I went to a cancer specialist hospital in Thailand, and I happened to, through luck, I had the best doctor in the hospital, just because I was like patient number 6 that day or whatever, and he was seeing patient number 6, new patient number 6, and he was also the best surgeon in the hospital. And he said to me, and he asked me all about my past, and really said, go on, go on, go on. He really wanted to understand me as much as possible. And at some point he said to me, I'm so glad you had all of this intense martial arts training, because I can tell you that what you're going to be going through for the next 4 or 5 months is going to be much, much more difficult than anything you ever did in your martial arts training. Pause.
Yeah, and I believe that, because you described it to me as you were going through it, and it was some horrific stuff.
Yes, yes. So something that I think can hopefully be a good lesson for people as they're listening. And believe me, I don't have religion of any sort to sell to anyone, but I created, well, I'm a professional hypnotist, amongst other things, and I have a lot of experience in hypnotism. And I work with a good friend and colleague of mine, Joel Elfman, and we made up a trance induction for me to listen to every day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, and people usually find this pretty unusual at first, one of the things I did in this trance induction, and I think I was using the word God, or I might have even used the word Jesus, but you can use whatever word you like. I said, Lord, one thing for certain, I want to thank you for this cancer. And I'm not sure what I'm supposed to learn from this cancer, but I'm sure also that I'm going to find out before it's all over. So thank you for this. And please let me get all the lessons I need and you desire in the most efficient way possible. So I would be saying thank you for my cancer 2, 3, 4 times a day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I now recall you telling me that, and it's your spirit is beautiful, Charlie.
Well, again, with the Aikido and everything else, and even the fact that I got a lot of beatings as a kid, I don't believe in the fighting against metaphor. Oh, I'm really fighting against this cancer,
Or being outraged by.
Yeah, or feeling like, how could this happen to me, as good of a guy as I am, or whatever,
Right.
I mean, of course, some people have said to me, so if you could have known then what you didn't know, would you have stopped smoking years ago? I said, come on, what are you kidding me? Of course I would have, but that's not life.
Mm-hmm.
So I did what I did. It's okay. All of it's okay. I'm not bragging about it, but it's all okay. The fact that I smoked as much as I did and everything, because anyway,
Well,
here I am.
the way you handled the cancer is admirable. Something to brag
Yeah, well,
about. Not that
when you
bragging
go,
is necessary, but
yeah. Well, when I'd go into the radiation ward, I had 35 radiation treatments, 5 treatments a week for 7 weeks.
mm-hmm.
And I was always intrigued. I think they did this purposely. The radiation ward was actually underground. And I don't know enough about radiation. I don't know anything about radiation, actually, but I'm kind of thinking that was to stop that radiation, because I know it would go right through the walls and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because I used to get radiated on my right side, and it took off the lower part of my beard on the right side, and it took off the lower part of the beard on my left side, because the radiation just went straight through my jaw from one side of my face to the other, and most of the people sitting in the radiation ward looked like they were close to dying, and they looked to be in horrendous shape, and they were slouched over, and they of course didn't have a smile on their face. And I would go in every day and liven the place up a little bit. Like, you're supposed to drink a lot of water, in particular when you're getting treated for cancer. And they had small bottles of water, but they were always too busy to hand them out. So I took it upon myself to get one of the hospital carts, and I'd fill it up with 30, 40 bottles of water. And I'd walk around and give everybody a bottle of water. Nice. And of course, they'd say thank you, and I would just nod and go on. And when I had my last treatment and I came out of the radiation room, and I pumped my fist and I said, okay, I'm done. And these 2 ladies, I say older ladies, I mean, I'm 75, so they weren't even my age, but I mean, older ladies dressed conservative, old style, Thai clothing. They stood up and they looked at me with a beseeching look in their eyes, and I walked up to them one at a time, and they said to me in Thai, I just want to thank you so much. You've really helped me to live. And I started tearing up a little bit and crying, and it was actually my intention by handing out the water, and I was doing my best to be a positive life force.
Sure. You succeeding.
Yeah.
For yourself, too.
Yes, for myself. Well, there's a story, I don't remember the whole story, but somebody that was known to be quite kind and helpful to other people. And so someone was saying to this person, oh my goodness, you're one of the kindest people I've ever met. And this guy actually says, no, actually, I'm one of the more selfish people you've ever met. The only reason I'm so kind is because of all of the thanks I get from everybody. If nobody said thank you, I'd stop being kind tomorrow, he said.
Okay.
So the love you make is equal to the love you take, or the love you take is equal to the love you make, as the Beatles.
Amen. As the Beatles say.
And if the Beatles
Or
said
said.
it, it's got to be true.
That's true. I knew I liked you for a reason, Charlie.
Yeah, see that?
Hey, I got to come back to the blues harp at some point, too, because I take it that that's the hip way of saying harmonica.
Yes.
And I have my grandfather's harmonica, and I have not learned to play it. I use it now in all my workshops, just blowing a note when it's time to change and so on. But
well, how many holes are there in that harmonica?
Too many. It's extra long. All the YouTube videos are short little harmonicas.
Yeah. Okay. So that kind of harmonica is called a chromatic harmonica, and that has all the notes in it. Da 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 da.
It makes that noise?
Well, of course, that's my voice. Anyway. And the blues harp.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if it's called anything. I mean, you can call it harmonica, but who's going to say harmonica when you can just say harp, you know?
No, it's hipper to say harp.
And it's hipper as well, which is...
I mean, the blues were hip, so...
Yeah.
They still are.
So it doesn't have most of the notes. And the way you make the notes is by bending the airflow coming through the harmonica. But you never have the intention of playing a scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. But anyway, you bend the notes to get something that sounds good.
Okay, well, look, can you teach me something some other time?
Not on the chromatic harmonica. If you got it.
No, Charlie, that's what I've got.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll return to that.
Yes.
I bet you can teach me something.
And if somebody... If anybody, so this, what I'm calling it a human potential discipline that I created called Seishindo.
Well, that's what I want to come back to in our remaining time. So keep going.
Okay. So if you go on YouTube and type in Seishindo, Seishindo, you'll see some karate and this and that. And then you'll see something that has my name, Charlie Badenhop, or you'll see this face of this older guy, you know, and there's a lot of material on there, a lot of stress management, breathing. I did some videos after I think I was still in treatment and talking to people to give them an idea of what was going on for me during my treatment. And it was one of those things where I needed to do it while it was happening because that's where all the emotion was. You know? So, Seishindo. And
can I just say that at the end of your book, it says that you strive to create a context in which people feel empowered to achieve their life's dreams.
Yes.
And I know you do coaching still at 75, Zoom and maybe live, but so that's I'd love to have you just talk about that some if you're willing.
Okay. You know, so being 75, I graduated from college in 1970, just to give us a little context. And so I was in college 67, 68, 69, 70. In those days, psychology was Skinnerian psychology and mice in cages, and if you gave them a piece of cheese, they did this and that, and if you gave them some heroin, which they sometimes did, then something else happened.
No doubt.
In fact, this is something that's just come out, as far as I know, in the last 5 or 6 years, but I could be a little off, could be less 10 years. So everybody knew for years now, if you gave some mice or little rats a morphine drip bottle and a second bottle that was just water, the mice would get plastered on morphine. And in fact, I don't remember the exact time span, but like within a 2 or 3 week period, they'd kill themselves from overdosing heroin or morphine.
Mm-hmm.
Then, and this was going on. This was known when I was going to college, which was like close to 50 years ago. Yeah, 50 years ago. So they didn't just keep running the same experiment for 10,000 times, I don't think. Anyway, recently, some guy, very clever guy, I don't know his name, said, wait a minute. So he built a rat park, and with all of these little things, like some male rats and some good-looking female rats, and all these things that they could climb through and on top of, and bits of food over there and bits of food over there. And even if they managed to pull up this little thing, they got, some other goodies. And they really, the whether it's mice or rats, really seem to be much more active than they've ever been in captivity in when getting studied like this. And at some point, they introduced the usual bottle of water with the morphine or heroin drip and the plain bottle of water. And all of the mice took a couple of hits on the morphine water and soon just ignored it and only drank out of the water bottle with only water in it. And I mean, my God, this is after 50 or 60 years of everyone believing this is what drugs does to you, So this guy proved if you're living an interesting, self-fulfilling life, even as a bloody rat or mouse, you don't get hooked on heroin. So when I was in college, I had a passing interest in psychology, but all of it seemed so negatively oriented. And for years and years and years, psychiatrists and psychologists were very good at cataloging and naming all of the things that went wrong with people,
Right.
And there's this thick book, I don't remember right now what it's called.
DSM-3.
Yeah.
4 or 5. Anyway, there's all these iterations of it. And I'll just say that Jung, I noticed a Jung quote at the end of your book, and Jung back in the early 1900s was saying, all the psychiatry people, all they want to do is diagnose people. They don't actually want to know them.
Yes.
They don't want to talk to them.
They don't really know what to do to help them.
Yep. And they don't talk to them. They just want to diagnose them and then drug them.
Yeah. And in fact, you most likely know that Freud himself was a cocaine addict. So not the greatest guy to be trusting. Anyway, there's many different names for it, but what I would just simply call positive psychology that deals with what if you just had a positive outlook on things? Like, what if you built the rat park with all these interesting things in it? The rats don't want the heroin anymore. So what if instead of starting out and going, okay, like I got this Gilmore guy's coming to me as a new client. First thing I got to do before I say or do almost anything is find out what his problem is.
Right. What's wrong with this guy?
And go into detail so you really understand it. What I do in my work, and more people, I'm certainly not the only one, is, I'm seeing this Gilmore guy today. Let me find out what he's really good in, what his strengths are, what is it that I could most likely even learn from him. And then after I find all of that out, there might be some way that I can help him.
Nice.
So that brings me to a very interesting topic for me, which is a number of years ago, I saw this video on YouTube, because you can see everything on YouTube. And it was a Spanish doctor. And this was a long time ago to where it was in black and white, this video. And there's a lady patient laying down on an operating table. with the proper, hospital garb on. And this doctor, Escudero is his name, was talking to her nicely and saying, everything's going to go fine today. And the only thing that you want to just really pay attention to is that you've got moisture in your mouth, that you make saliva, that the saliva keeps on being made and is present in your mouth. So you always got a feeling of moisture in your mouth. And she just kind of says, yeah, doesn't say much. Anyway, because I didn't know what I was going to be watching this first time. Next thing you know, he starts up this surgical saw, which isn't at all like a saw you'd use when cutting wood or something. And he saws into the bone of the woman's right foreleg with no anesthesia whatsoever at all.
Yikes. Okay.
And I mean, the saw started, and I immediately, like a guy that's been around a lot of heavy duty stuff in my life, I immediately just looked away. And at the same time realizing this guy's not some kind of wild ass cowboy. So I'm sure he knows exactly what he's doing. But how do you just take some lady and tell her keep moisture in your mouth, fluid in your mouth, and saw into the bone of her leg? And she's totally fine. You watch it happening. I don't know. It's like she was just fine laying there. She knew something was happening, but she wasn't even in the slightest bit of pain. So I've started studying with these people lately. And it's been an eye-opener. It's been an eye-opener indeed. And so I want to teach our audience, if anyone's still listening, I want to teach our audience what I've been learning over the last couple of months from these wonderful people. And I've written up, you can call it a script, for myself that I recorded, and I play this through my computer speakers 3, 4, 5 times a day. And I want you to listen to it, and the only one that'll be able to comment on it will be Gilmore, because nobody else it's not a live show that we're doing with 100 people or something. But I just want you to take in what I'm saying, and then Gilmore can ask me whatever, or even say, gee, why did you do that, or whatever. I'm happy to hear anything. So here we go. I am the wisdom, intelligence, and love that creates and supports all of life. Everything I've been looking for outside of myself is actually found inside myself. I have the source of everything within myself. I was born with a psyche that functions perfectly and an innate resilience and clarity. I have a natural capacity to be healthy, to survive and thrive, and I'm an excellent student and teacher. I have the potential to enjoy life fully and successfully navigate its ups and downs. Nature made me perfectly, and I am perfectly imperfect. Just like everyone else, I experience an internally generated model of the world based on sensory data, previous experience, and my current belief system and model of the world. In each and every instance, I perceive a subjective reality and never objective reality. My brain acts as a prediction engine. It interprets new information based on my prior experiences and beliefs. My feelings don't know that I exist, just like my computer doesn't know I exist. I'm feeling the ebb and flow of an impersonal energy, same as when I'm looking at my computer screen. The ebb and flow of being connected to a universal energy. My feelings are just letting me know what kind of reality I'm walking around in any given moment. My feelings offer me a moment-by-moment flow of information, letting me know how I am perceiving, but not what I am perceiving. My different senses are raw data ports, pouring huge amounts of information into my system, huge amounts. And from all this, I make a best guess of what's occurring and what is out there. And in fact, I'm walking around totally always in a guess. Like gravity, I just am, and I don't need any fixing. Gravity works whether you believe or not in it. I'm perfectly imperfect, and I have everything I've ever needed. I have the source of emotional health and well-being inside myself. I am neither less than or greater than anyone else. I am no more or no less special than anyone else. I am me, and the universe don't make junk. So I know that was long, hopefully not terribly long, hopefully not boringly long, but I record this and I'm listening to it, Gilmore, depending on the day, of course, like anything else, but minimum 2-3 times a day, often 4, 5, 6 times a day, because I'll be the first to tell you, even now as I was reading this, I wrote it, and I didn't copy anything that these people I'm studying with told me to write or anything. I wrote it. I believe in it, but you know what? I don't fully believe it yet. And I'm saying this to myself every day, numerous times a day, to teach myself a new way of respecting and honoring myself and a new way of being present in the world.
It's lovely, Charlie.
Yes.
And there was nothing you just said that didn't resonate in my own way of looking at things. So, yeah, I could well imagine. I don't think I was ready years ago. Like when you came to Seattle, I don't think I would have been ready to do a T group workshop that we co-led. It wasn't just a T group workshop, but I could well imagine doing work like that with you, where we began with this.
Yes, it's a radical idea. No two ways about it, you know. And my experience, like I've consulted in large corporations, but I've never worked as a daily salary worker in a large corporation. And my opinion is that a lot of what goes on in corporations is very much like a military model. And the higher ups don't trust the lower down people. And the higher ups are expecting that the lower people are going to screw around if they get the chance and no one's watching them or critiquing them. And therefore,
yeah, and they because of that thinking, they help create the conditions.
Exactly. They create a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, I think so, yes.
So when I say I'm the wisdom, intelligence, and love that creates and supports all of life, you know, if you said, yes, Charlie, wait a second, but that's not the way you were appearing to be that time you got stopped by the policeman when we were driving around in Seattle, I go, okay, give me a break, Gilmore. I'm not claiming I'm living this all of the time, but I believe it's the bigger truth that I'd like to actually live my life by.
I'm with you, Charlie. I mean, our soul, for want of a better word, is perfect and is not a reflection of our bad habits in the present.
Yes.
So a couple of things that you just said in there certainly fits well, that we're creating our perception of the world is our perception of the world, and it's not the world. It's our way of seeing it, which then creates our emotional reactions to the world. Anyway, all that's woven in there. It reminds me also of the Toltec, Don Miguel Ruiz. They talk about it as we're dreaming the world, and
Yes.
everybody's in their own dream, and so for heaven's sake, that's why it's wise not to take anything personally, because other people are wrapped up in their own dreams of what you are.
Yes.
That may have very little to do with who you actually are.
Well, you know what?
Anyway, it's all great stuff to explore. So I appreciated that. That was exactly the kind of thing I was hoping to come back to.
So something that never ceases to amaze me, and I love it. So I meditate often 2, 3, 4 times a day. And again, no big deal. Oh, you meditate? I meditate because I get good results from it, overall.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me feel calmer and more equanimous and everything. So, but here's the part that always nicely blows me away. I sit down. I have this very special, comfortable chair that I sit down in. I can easily fold my legs and sit with my legs crossed. I take a couple of deep breaths, and sometimes it's almost like poof, like 10 seconds later, I'm in some kind of scene with my head, with my eyes closed, and I think I'm meeting a beautiful woman, or I think again I got stopped by a policeman, or whatever, and I'm totally into it, and my pulse is racing, and I even find myself like moving a little bit, to like not get hit by something. Almost immediately, I no longer realize that I'm just sitting in my bloody chair. I'm sitting in the theater of my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my belief that that's a lot of what life is like.
Even when we're with other people and we think it's them, it's still our theater about them.
Yes. Well, when you become self-responsible, you realize, for instance, my father doesn't make me crazy, or my wife doesn't make me crazy, or the guy down the street doesn't make me angry. I make myself angry or crazy in response to what those people are doing.
Sure.
And, I have to make sure I have a good enough relationship with a person when I'm coaching them. If they're going, my wife, she makes me crazy when she does X. And
mm-hmm.
I say, excuse me, if you hopefully won't mind me saying, you make yourself crazy when your wife does X. I've had some clients when I said that too early on in the coaching relationship, and the client will almost always be a male, says, now you pass all my words and trying to make me sound wrong.
Yeah.
Self-responsibility, my friend.
Sure. That is why I, like Wallen's interpersonal gap as a way to enter that same conversation.
Yes.
It seems to help most people get it, that they're basing their beliefs about others. It's the story they're making up as they go along.
It's and it's to a large extent, it's a story about how, at least in this relationship, but chances are in a number of other things going on in my life, I'm a victim.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And, when I'm a victim, hey, what the hell can I do? And we don't even have to try to fix anything. We can just continue to be a victim. It could be a very comfortable place for some people to be in. Because
sure, the other people have to change.
Yes.
Or you can fix it by leaving.
Yes.
And of course, repeating the pattern.
Yes.
The next place you go.
So life is a full-time activity. I don't think there's a phenomenal poet. His name is David Whyte, Whyte. And I think maybe he's Welsh, which would lead to an understanding of how he could be a great poet, because Welsh culture is really very special.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about a lot of things, but one of the things that I was reading by him recently is sort of like this. This isn't his words, and I don't want to do him an injustice, but it's is something like, he says, let me just ask you before we go any further, how many times have you lost in life? How many times have you played a fool? Because if you can't answer that in a very kind of open and free-handed manner, wow, you're living a terrible life. You know, he says it much nicer than that, but
or you're fooling yourself.
You know, yeah. And what all of the great athletes, well, pretty much all of the great athletes say, you know, I was good right from the beginning, but it was only after I lost that first championship that I really got the hunger.
Mm-hmm.
And the lesser players say, and after we lost that championship, I just gave up on myself. So the top players that are losing the championship makes them hungrier.
Yeah. Or the lesser players might say it was somebody else's fault.
Yes. If that other player had done better. So,
yes, or if the refs hadn't.
Yeah. So that's a little quick run through Charlie's life. And I hope people have enjoyed listening. And as far as this long thing that I read out about, I'm the wisdom, intelligence, and love, etc. If there's anybody that actually wanted a copy of that and they wrote to Gilmore, I'd be happy to give him a copy of that. And I'm guessing he'd be happy to send it to you. And I just want to say, this is like my public service announcement. I just want to say, please think about writing something up vaguely similar for yourself. And I do very much mean vaguely, because I wrote this from my life, but write up something that really helps you to understand and appreciate just how wonderful you are and just how perfect you are just as you are now. And for me, 75 years old, I'm writing it down and listening to it 3, 4, 5 times a day because, wow, I got a lot of bad habits along the way, and this is really helping me. So that's my public service announcement.
That's lovely, Charlie. And of course, well, 2 things. One is just reminds me of Merton. Merton pops into my head a lot with his simple quote of it's the unaccepted self that stands in my way.
Yes. Yes.
And so you're certainly giving a message of acceptance.
Yes.
Not delusion.
Yeah. And you know, the greater acceptance you have of others, which doesn't mean, oh, I'm fine with everything that person does. I'm fine when that guy beats his daughter. And I don't mean that kind of acceptance, but you can have keen judgment without the need to be judgmental. Judgmental is when you're looking for what's wrong with a person or everything. When you can have keen judgment and still respect all of the people that you come in contact with, and including like someone with my father. Yes, he was a violent alcoholic, but he was quite well known when he was still alive as being one of the greatest heroes in the New York City Fire Department in that era. You know, so what is the good side of this person? What does this person's mother see when they look at him or her? And if you can take on that while still saying, I don't accept X and Y, that's perfect.
So, Charlie, with that thought, you certainly are available through, people can find you. They just put in Charlie Badenhop.
Yes.
They will likely find your website and,
Yes.
YouTube videos. Certainly anyone that's listening that wants me to help, I can put them in touch with you.
Sure.
And I deeply appreciate you spending this time with me. And as always, I also have learned things during this conversation.
Yes.
So
yes.
Thank you so much.
And Gilmore, I just want to say in this, very, very, very end, I met your father, and who's a bit older than me, quite a bit older than me. How old's your dad now?
95.
95. I met your father maybe 3 years ago or something. And it
A
was
little
such a
longer than that.
okay.
But I keep going. It's okay.
But it was such a blessing to meet him. And it was the first time I really got to know you at all also. So I'm getting a lot from the Crosby family. And I'm happy if I'm giving a little bit back to you. So thanks a lot.
Well, it's definitely a blessing to know you, Charlie. And so you're welcome. And thank you.
Okay.
And that, I believe, is a wrap.
That's it. Okay. And
so thank you so much for your time, and thank you, listeners. Any last thing you want to say, Charlie?
No, because then I can go on for another 15 minutes if I don't watch myself. So thanks a lot.
Well, I'm sure it would be a lovely 15 minutes. And I think we'll call it the end here. So you take care, Charlie.
Okay, bye-bye.
Hey, I appreciate you listening. This, again, is Gil Crosby. And I want you to take advantage of what's available to you. I have many free materials. I am happy to talk to people about their situations, especially if you're trying to create change, either social change or organization change. We have frequent workshops that are available, T group workshops. If you have never been in a T group with us, then don't miss it in your life. It's many people have said to me, of all the trainings I've ever received, I got this one 30 years ago, and it's the only one that stuck with me. You're learning from your actual interactions with the other participants and with the faculty. The faculty are walking the same talk that they're teaching of behavioral skills. It's a training workshop. That's what the T stands for. This is done in the spirit of the creation of T groups by Kurt Lewin and his associates. It's for groups. It's for teams. That's how it was originally designed. It is a opportunity to learn about theory and put it directly into practice. Again, the original design, you learn things and then you put them into practice. It was not just all ambiguity, which is how some T groups, most are led today, where the faculty hardly says anything. That's not how this is designed. So join us for that. There's always workshops. There's the Leadership Institute of Seattle, which has certificate programs, a two-year program where you will learn from T groups and learn how to do all the organization development work that my father designed, most of it, and I continue that practice alongside my brother Chris and many other associates. So don't be a stranger. There's a lot going on. It's always changing. So be in touch, and it's on the website, crosbyod.com. I look forward to working with you in your organization or as you pursue things like reducing gun violence and decreasing racism in our society. Whatever your goals are, the social science of Kurt Lewin guides how to achieve those goals in a reliable way. And so that's what I apply and practice every day and invite you to.